In today's episode, we'll talk about the drop as a feature for video game music. Now, to have a good drop, the most important feature is anticipation.
Did we lose Galen's audio?
I don't see any connection message.
Maybe it's not registered yet. Well, in any case, welcome to
Haitian! Welcome to the Music Arcade.
Hey,
Hello everyone, welcome to a likely very loopy episode of the Music Arcade. I'm Galen, the Sound Guy Firestone.
I'm Wannakill, back from 2 days of Magic the Gathering pre-release.
and I'm Eddie, and I am 3 different medications right now. Who knows?
I mean, I hope you do.
Yeah, I feel like that'd be,
Also, you doctor. Frankly, that's an easy question, Eddie. Anyway, welcome to Music Arcade. For today's episode, something a bit more focused on a specific part of game music rather than a broader kind of theme. It's going to be an interesting one, the drop. Conveniently for the research, it was a pretty easy one once the tracks were selected, because there's a fun little trick. YouTube's most watched moment.
yeah.
If you have a track and there's a huge peak at a most watched moment, that's a drop.
Pretty much. The drop is still something musically that's kind of, a little foreign to my brain. I'm not really an EDM guy. I understand it on paper, but actually identifying it became very surprisingly difficult, but also very easy.
Yeah, because I think we all had a question during the selection that came to our mind, which is it a drop or is it just a shift of tone?
Yeah, or an intro leading into a main body. That's something that I don't really consider a drop, because it's literally, that's the point of the intro. It's not the drop. Here's the thing that got to me, and this is the most random thing ever. Eddie, you and I both watch a internet music reviewer by the name of Todd of the Shadows. And
I do too.
Oh, you do? I didn't know you were also into him. I didn't have that conversation with you nearly as often. I apologize for excluding you.
No problem. Eddie has converted me via DMs. It took him a few months of sending me his videos, but it turns out they were good, so I continued watching them.
There we have it. Once upon a time, he did a review of a song that I think was Coldplay and the Chainsmokers, 2 bands that I could not care less about. But one of the things that happened at the end of that was that they actually combined a drop with a guitar solo, and that's kind of what I focused on, to be like, okay, that's where that actually goes. It's not an intro thing, it's a mid-content thing.
Oh, that's interesting. I have yet to watch this episode, though.
The episode, much like the song in question, is extremely mid, but I say that because I am not a Coldplay fan at all, so, you know.
Fair enough.
I think the song is just like this or something like that.
You are asking the wrong guy. it's
I
Todd of the Shadows with Coldplay and some EDM thing that I think is the Chainsmokers, question mark, but don't quote me on that. It could be like Marshmallow or something. Yeah. Okay.
No, it is the Chainsmokers. I remember that the chorus goes something like, I need something just like this, the chorus. So I think the song is something,
well, I did need something just like this to help define in my brain what the drop was, so I guess that's an appropriate title.
I'm not an EDM.
But of course, there's an additional element to our talk of the drop in this episode, because video games are interactive, and with a strong, well-defined point within the music for something to happen, I think it'll be interesting to talk about the tracks that just have this as part of the music, and the ones that try to integrate it with gameplay in more or less successful ways.
Yeah, in fact, it's even a gameplay plot element in the stage of Berlin in Hitman World of Assassination, formerly known as Hitman 3, where the inspiration for this episode took place. Back in the April Fool's episode, I randomized one of Eddie's tracks into the drop elusive target from Hitman, and it was fun watching Eddie flail on that one. I love our April Fool's episodes. They're fun.
Especially since you, as you said, you aren't really much of an EDM guy, right, Eddie?
No. Oh.
Nope. But it wasn't that was the theme for the, I had already picked the song, is how the episode worked.
Right.
And Galen just randomized these as the theme for me to justify why that was the song I was talking about.
But
I don't remember what song it was.
It was Baldur's Gate 3.
Oh, right. Raphael's Final Act.
Something like that. But the ET itself actually provides a really great proof of concept by this, because the guy we're killing, Dimitri Vegas, wrote a theme that's unique to this level, and one of the things you can do is go to the DJ booth and cause a drop to happen. Like, musically.
Yeah. Which is such a nice way to, like we said, to integrate things and to have the biggest act of a Hitman level, which is the assassination of your target, have a climactic point within the music as well.
Yeah, and that's usually fairly hard to tell when you're doing a regular mission, because sometimes you just need to put a bullet in somebody. But in a case like this one, it encouraged you to make the music work, which I think is actually super neat. I've been pretty happy. This is probably my favorite of the... Oh, no, I can't say that. Jean-Claude Van Damme exists. The celebrity elusive targets have been a very interesting addition to the game.
Yeah, it's weird, too, because like you wouldn't expect a popular DJ to turn into an interesting video game character and plot element looking from the outside, but this has been pretty successful. On the Fatal Fury City of the Wolves side, Salvatore Ganacci came out of nowhere. Everybody was like, who is he and what is he doing there? But it turns out he's looking like one of the most fun and creative characters in the game.
Wasn't there also
this
some
is a
other
secret special blend? Yeah, there was also some other more problematic pick.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
I'm like, that wasn't the one I was thinking of when you mentioned Fatal Fury. I'm like, wait, there was someone else, wasn't there? Yeah, okay.
Which made it all the more fun when the community at large ignored the bigger name and rallied behind Salvatore Ganacci.
That's... I just gained a whole new level of respect for that community. Thank you.
I know, right?
But it reminds me of the Triviat video of him doing the... I don't remember the name. That MMA fighter, Conor McGregor, elusive target.
Oh, yeah.
The only video he has done of that elusive target has him deliberately making Conor McGregor be afraid of you in the middle of a fight.
No, yeah.
Good.
He specifically chose to make him look like a coward.
Good.
And apparently to go further in that little aside, on the Cristiano Ronaldo front, basically my understanding is that Maximilian Dude kind of treated him like a weird little include because he didn't have the abusive background of the guy, and got informed on it on a forum and was like, oh, okay, didn't know that. All right, fuck that guy. I'm never bringing him up in positive terms again. Moving on.
There you go. Yeah, that's the correct response for a guy like that.
Yeah, exactly.
The song itself is really cool. Like, as like dark EDM goes, if you're about to go on a killing spree in a club in Berlin, this is the song you want soundtracking, and I'll be honest, I like this a lot better than regular Berlin.
Yeah, exactly. Like, if you need to sell the atmosphere of a club in Berlin, you need a song whose energy matches what you have. And this one, I can definitely see myself listening to it in that kind of situation, which means that it helps the atmosphere instead of hindering it for a random guest. It's a good inclusion with a solid construction that helps elevate the gameplay instead of detracting from it. It's a wonderful include.
Yeah.
And I think we don't have full confirmation on the composer for the base game, so I don't know if there's someone who's actually into EDM and that sort of stuff. But this song, as far as we know, was Dimitri Vegas song he made for the game. So you're getting something by someone who knows exactly what he's doing. He lives this.
I mean, I will say that in every Hitman game, quote unquote, now that they're all one game, it's harder to say, but there was always one
the trilogy.
The trilogy. There was always one per game that was like this really cool EDM track. It was Paris in the first one. There was one upstairs in Miami in the second one, and then in the third one we have Berlin. So they don't seem opposed to the genre, that's for sure.
Right.
Especially as an atmospheric element rather than a part of the non-diegetic soundtrack.
Yeah.
It is a little bit funny that we're talking about EDM and electronic in Hitman, because this is a point I am going to bring up again in the future on this episode.
Oh, I'm pretty sure I know what song that is.
I think you know what song that is as well, but let's put a pin on EDM and electronica in Hitman. That's gonna come back up.
Well, one thing I noticed a lot about this list is that we tended to avoid electronica and EDM. Like, we actually found drops in a lot of things that weren't. So let's go ahead.
That was kind of what I was hoping for, because I figured they would be pretty clear-cut candidates. So might as well have some fun for it and find places where it's a little bit less expected. For instance, in a very recurring leitmotif.
And it's time to talk about Destiny again. Hey, Eddie, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing all right. I think the meds are working. So, if you're following the playlist, you're gonna see a video that says Sepiks Prime cover by Bob. I want to start with the backstory of the song before I actually talk about music here.
Please
because this is a rare case of Bungie doing something that I think was really nice from the point of view of the executives allowing this to happen. Sepiks Prime is a boss from the base release of Destiny 1, and he had his own theme. When the expansion Rise of Iron came out, which I think was the first expansion for Destiny 1, they decided to pick this cover and add to the soundtrack. On Spotify, you find the soundtrack as Sepiks Redux, and it's credited to the composers and the cover artist. On YouTube, you can find the automatically generated playlist for the album, and where this song goes at the end is this cover video.
I see. So they just fully integrated the fan work.
Yes.
Love it when that happens.
It appears in Destiny 2 as well, because the sort of a mini dungeon in terms of, in other games terms. In Destiny terms, we call it a strike. The strike is reprised in Destiny 2, and the Destiny 2 version uses Sepiks Redux, which is how they decided to name this cover. Also, recently there has been a heavy metal PvP mode where it's tanks on one side and mechs on the other, and apparently the song plays there as well. I didn't play that mode. I was taking a break off from Destiny at the time.
That just sounds cool.
Yeah. And if you listen to the song, you get why they played this in heavy metal mode.
Yeah.
But anyway, this song illustrates a little bit my approach to finding drops in music, in video game music, because I was going for broad terms. My idea was it needs to have a build-up section, it needs to then suddenly have a new melodic idea that comes with a heavy impact, let's say.
Yeah.
So this is an instance where the original version does not have a drop by my quote unquote definition.
Great. Moving on. Just kidding.
Come on. The original version of this is very orchestral because that is how Destiny does Destiny.
Right.
This cover, I think, is an interesting example of how the instrumentation changes the vibe of the song. Because, in my opinion, at around 1:10 into the song, there is a drop.
I would agree.
Yep.
It turns what's usually just a melodic, a change in melody from an orchestral piece into a drop, a heavy metal drop.
Yeah, and there's a bit of a hang time between the two of them. Like, imagine it like, I don't know, a skateboarding trick where there's the part where you're preparing and changing the movement, then there's however long you can hold it, and then there's the part where you go down and crash on your face or on your wheels, depending on your level of skill / luck. And the hang time is kind of what builds, all joking from the intro aside, the anticipation for the drop by kind of making almost the promise that the drop is about to happen. And
something that I found doing some quick research into what people recognize as a drop, it seems that generally speaking, they expect either a moment of silence right before the drop, or just the instruments going louder a little bit, but still retaining that build-up melody.
Yeah, and this one does kind of something in between where it's still playing, but with like the background and backline of the instruments silent, so it's just the main element that insists harder to build in already a kind of punching way, what is going to change the tone of the track for something a little bit more fighty and aggressive.
I think it even, if you listen to this with the expectation of there being a drop, there's a fake out at around 40 seconds in, because there's a moment where it stops, more or less. Like there's no sound for a split second, and you think, there's the drop. Nope, it's back to the build-up. It's still building up tension.
Yeah, and that's also a trait that I never paid attention to, but that's not the only track that does that. There's a lot of time in other music, I kind of started paying attention to it in other music too, where there's this two-part step where there's like 80% of the build-up, then a return to normal, and then the full build-up and the full drop, kind of to help build, rebuild, and dismantle expectations.
I think there's something to be said about playing with those expectations. I also think to say you can overdo it. I've definitely heard songs where it's just like, we're leading up to the drop, we're leading up to the drop, we're leading up to the drop, and it just never happens or it tapers off. This may seem like a weird take to have on this one, or weird song to bring up, but one of Silk Sonic / Bruno Mars's songs has this problem extremely. It was one of their earliest singles as a band, and it was just like, it had this huge build-up into a chorus that just petered out, and it's just like, I feel like all the energy went nowhere here.
It's not a drop, it's a flop at this point.
Exactly, yes.
At one point, the build-up just starts registering as a regular melody, and then if you drop after that has happened, the drop doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
Exactly. But for this track, it's definitely earned. Like, one time, just building it up, moving down, and building it up again. It's it's like building a good roller coaster.
Yeah, I think that's true of any song, though. That's the funny part when it comes to music composition. There are very rare circumstances, and this is why I don't like brickwalling. Again, we're talking about not game music here for a moment. This is why I really don't like brickwalling in heavy metal, and why my opinion of Peter Tägtgren as a heavy metal producer has fallen rather sharply. Let's ignore his controversial views for a second and just focus on his production style entirely. He brickwalls things so hard, the VU meters are practically straight lines. There's no variation, so you don't get that rolling coaster effect. It makes good songs infinitely more boring when that happens.
Now that you use this mental image, even though I brought it up as well, I just had a memory that returned to me of a little game called Audio Surf, which basically lets you play rhythm games with whatever music you put in, and it has this visual look of kind of a futuristic roller coaster.
Okay.
And and it was, of course, a bit too freeform to be considered. Basically, if I considered the musical content available for Audio Surf in this show, any single music would work technically, but I still have especially fond memories of Are You the One by Miranda Sex Garden, which starts extremely gently and has this absolute vertiginous drop, and then it returns, and it's just basically two-faced, where you have, in rhythm term games, the most boring track possible for like 80% of the level, and then just the absolute hell for the last 20%. The fact that there's this visual representation as well, where it's not just that you have a lot more bricks to collect or avoid, but also that there's a literal drop in the level geometry, and that everything turns red when the intensity gets cranked up. It really helps have this drop be more literal, even though in this song I don't think it was so much a drop as kind of a weird moment of intensity, which sounds a lot like a drop and was visually represented as a drop, but I'm not sure would count as a... Drops are weird. Definitions are weird.
Definitions are weird, and as I said before, this one is kind of foreign to my brain, so is it a sure? I'm just going to say sure. But then again, actually, no, the way you described it, now that actually just sounds like the chorus just freaks out.
Yeah, kinda.
I'm not sure I would count that then, because it's not really a special moment or anything, it's just the chorus.
Yeah, it returns like 2 or 3 times throughout the song.
Yeah,
Still, it's nice to have a track with a heavy relief instead of something that's stable no matter the intensity, as you mentioned. I think Escape also qualifies for that for FF14, where it's just very even all throughout the song and doesn't harbor a drop.
That's one of the I've been over this song and my dislike of it a few times now, so I don't think we need to get back into it. Thank you for bringing it up and making me hate it again.
No, that was just my way to possibly build up a transition to the next track.
Oh, the transition was to the next track is the thing I've been doing lately that I probably shouldn't, where technically the song I posted isn't the correct one, it's just my preferred mix of it. The song in question is from Final Fantasy VIII. It's the final boss track of Final Fantasy VIII, the Extreme. I just played the FF14 remix version because it's really, really good.
It's really good.
It's really good.
It's really good.
Even Eddie's saying it. He's not a Final Fantasy guy at all.
Hey, I like good music. Final Fantasy has always had good music.
That's why you have you on board.
That's why you tolerate the heretic who doesn't play Final Fantasy.
This is more of an apostasy, actually.
Anyway, so this song's drop does not appear where you think it does, because this song is a very long intro that's practically a minute and a half long. It's gorgeous. I love the piano going into it. how it swirls around each other. It's just a great intro. And then the song starts up. That's not the drop. The drop actually comes a little bit after that, because you have that...
I am so glad you said that, because I was going to bring it up if you didn't immediately.
Yeah, no. Yeah, we were on the same page on this one. Yeah. It's literally like we have that one song. Like, we have that opening...
a long intro.
Yeah, we have that long intro into the main body of the song, but the main body of the song doesn't open up for another 16 bars, I think. It basically goes through a full phrase before the beat actually kicks in, so to speak, and it becomes this orchestral prog rock, just beauty of a song. And then there's a second one after the reprise of the intro, which happens during the bridge, and then that drops back into the main theme as well. So those are the two, like, actual drop points.
Yeah, that really sells out this feeling of escalation after escalation.
Yeah. You were talking about this being a roller coaster. I think this gets that job done very well in that regard.
It goes at crazy high speed, and again, with the roller coaster metaphor, the intro feels very key like that. The fact that it's longer than most intros on video game music track probably should be, helps set up this final boss theme, because the fight is expected to be long, so they can afford a little bit more stretch room to do things like a 1 minute 20 seconds intro that feels completely different than the main part of the theme, but helps reflect in its intensity. It's kind of a low baseline so that the highs feel higher.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a very interesting construction also in comparison to the last two final boss themes in Final Fantasy as a series, because this is very worthy of its position, but completely different from the more expected at this point ominous Latin chanting apocalyptic themes.
I mean, even then, if you look at these three final boss themes all in a row, you have Dancing Mad, followed by One Winged Angel, followed by this.
I would argue that it's actually Dancing Mad, followed by One Winged Angel, followed by Liberi Fatali.
This Liberi Fatali isn't a final boss theme. What are you talking about? Wake up.
Yeah, it's the intro. That's what I mean. When it comes to tone and what kind of music it is, the first two are the final boss theme, and Liberi Fatali is the one that succeeds to them, but it's used as the intro and not as the final boss theme.
That's an interesting take. I hadn't thought of it that way. I don't think I disagree, but that is a very interesting take.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting as well what they chose kind of in this final spot instead.
Final Fantasy VIII is... Sorry, go on.
I wouldn't engage on that conversation if I knew what the hell was going on.
It's Final Fantasy VIII. No one knows what the hell is going on. Sorry, I had to.
You're not wrong.
From what I've seen online, that's a fair response, to be honest.
It's a controversial game for a reason. It gets wild at the end.
The main scenario theory that make sense has been explicitly disproved by lead writer, which hasn't knocked that theory off common expectations at this point.
Yeah, it's I will say this. Ultimecia is a character who, by and large, kind of comes out of nowhere, and the fact that... not the same way as, like, Necron or Cloud of Darkness.
Yeah.
But is definitely a character that had subtle build-up only throughout the entire game. So the fact that her music is so far removed from everything else that's been going on is honestly pretty hype. I think it fits really well. I've been pretty open that that Final Fantasy VIII is my favorite soundtrack.
Yeah, and it's really, really good. I've listened again to the soundtracks of Final Fantasy 6 through 10 recently because of the Final Fantasy themed Magic the Gathering set pre-release.
Yeah.
And what kind of shocked me on this release is how musically close Final Fantasy 6 and 7 soundtrack were in many parts, whereas Final Fantasy 8 Mark of Departure, I'd argue there's almost more difference for half the soundtrack between 6 and 7 than between 7 and 8 than between 6 and 7.
Weirdly enough, I would actually say that I think 6 and 8 have more similarity than not.
Really?
Yeah, a lot of the tone, especially when you get into things like Devil's Lab, that would fit, a modern version of that would fit really well in FF8 soundtrack.
In the setting, I agree, but in kind of the way the instruments are used, like it feels like there's a lot of, not the more intense and the more well-known parts of the 7th soundtrack, but the quiet tone themes and event themes you don't really think about unless you have them right in your ears again. These feel like they're pretty close together.
I mean, it's like, you could put, say, Searching for Friends and Blue Fields next to each other, and I don't think that sounds necessarily incorrect, but you compare it to the overall theme of FF7, and that one definitely feels like the different energy. Do you see where I'm coming from when I say that? Am I crazy?
I know I want to put a pin in that and maybe find out another episode where we can go deeper on that, because I think that's an interesting discussion. Maybe for an episode where Eddie is otherwise indisposed.
Yeah, I feel like if we're going super deep dive into Final Fantasy, Eddie may not be the best person to have on hand. Sorry, dude.
I was gonna say I would be eating some popcorn while we were talking, but I dropped it, so...
Boo.
If even Ran is saying boo, that's saying something.
Deep inside, he liked it. I know him.
I did.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Anyway, going back to the actual Final Fantasy VIII track.
Yeah.
I really like the gothic vibes on this one.
I mean, you're dealing... like, Eddie, I'm going to be honest, if there was a Final Fantasy game I think you personally would enjoy, it would be 8. There's a lot of, like, gothic witchery going around mixed with hard sci-fi.
I've seen some images.
Also, the gothic vibes are kind of an echo of the whole dungeon area right before the final boss sequence, which would be 100% your thing.
Eat?
Yeah.
I should listen to the soundtrack one of these days.
You should. It's a great soundtrack. You just said you like good music. Even if you don't like the game, I'm sure you will like the music.
Yeah. Many people don't really like Final Fantasy VIII, and I haven't really seen the soundtrack because it's just extremely good.
I've seen one person who hates the regular boss theme, Force Your Way, because they think it sounds like a weak version of Those Who Fight Further. I disagree with that, but I have seen that take a few times.
Yeah, Force Your Way isn't really my favorite as well, I agree. But comparing it to Those Who Fight Further feels like the wrong angle to go at. Speaking of angles to go at, to get back to the extreme a little, I don't quite remember if it's from the FF14 mix specifically, or if it's in the original as well, but for the drop itself, one of the elements I like is that despite the track being mainly focused on guitars and electronics and longer notes, the drop itself, the real one, not the transition between the intro and the rest of the theme, feels almost like a victory fanfare. Not the victory fanfare, but with the brass coming in real hard, real of a sudden, kind of being the main element of the drop itself. I think it's kind of a way to push you forward and makes this a song of victory almost.
I think that's a fair statement. The FF8 version of this boss theme is a lot more difficult than FF7's final boss theme, so having that kind of, as you say, almost triumphant part to it to kind of push you forward, I think is very helpful for this boss. It is.
Yeah.
Whereas,
I mean, she even has a mechanic where if one of your character dies, they just disappear.
Yeah, which is not one of my favorite mechanics. I don't want to say where I had to. I will just say that there's an optional boss in Expedition 33 that also does that, and that makes things real rough.
Oh, I see.
That's not a mechanic I love. Like, don't just take options away from me.
Yeah, it just negates a part of the game.
Yeah. With that said, there's a lot of firepower here. One of my favorite parts is, like, the dueling, like, Minimoog synth organ. And, like, it almost leads into a reverse drop, because once you have that, like, dueling counterpoint sequence, it actually goes back into the piano line before it comes back in for the second drop. I think that's kind of interesting. I'm not sure how you'd call a reverse drop, because it feels like you're both slowing down and quieting down.
Honestly, if there's one kind of big antagonist that would make sense to mess with the right order things are supposed to happen, that would be the one, given the whole time compression situation.
That's fair. Which also leads to the point where, like, even then, this for such a possibly, like, you could argue this song is disjointed, but it feels so complete despite that.
Oh, yes. Yeah, like, even the part what feel completely different, like the intro to the most of the rest of the track, help contrast each other. And the track would be lesser without those separated elements.
Yeah.
It's all things coming together that makes it this track.
Yeah.
Which is very fitting.
Yeah. If there's one thing I think Uematsu's proven he's good at over the decades, is he knows how to make a hell of a final boss track.
Yeah. And also, I will say the fact that it's in 14 reused and the context in which it's reused, like, they had to make the mechanics absolutely frantic for it to work out. And I think they did a pretty good job with from the looks of it. I haven't fought the boss myself.
I have. I can confirm. Yes, it's. Yeah. There's a lot going on, and you got to be quick on the draw.
Yeah, like, it's mechanics following each other really quickly, then lets you time to stew in them and figure and solve it in your head before you have to solve it in the game itself.
Yeah, there was no in my head. I had a cheat sheet up every time I rated that. I'm like, I have symbols, I look over here, cross-reference it, okay, that's where I run.
Head empty, only rotation.
For that particular set of mechanics, yes.
This is a comment that I think only Rana will get, but it sounds like Final Fantasy bosses really are that similar to Destiny bosses.
I know, right?
Yeah, some mechanics are really esoteric, and again, if they require a freaking diagram in an Excel spreadsheet, yikes.
Yeah.
You should see the raid resources section of my Destiny Clan's Discord.
Oh, I believe it already. Yes.
I have seen some things.
Rana definitely has.
Well, share with the rest of the class.
Yeah.
So it's more visual.
Yeah, it's like, from what I understand, it's a meme account that posts Final Fantasy XIV boss.
It's named, and that's why I'm not sure we should go forward with on air, but it's called FF14 diagrams that look like shitposting.
Yeah, it's basically the diagrams for how to fight Final Fantasy XIV bosses, but they look like it's just memes. And from what Rana has told me,
it's not the account itself that makes them. It's generally like somebody from a free company sending sending it to them to repost. And on the 1st of April, they post diagrams of a variety of different games, from chess to things completely unrelated to games, to a good amount of Destiny raid guides.
Oh, I
love that. And I use the term loosely.
Yeah, Ren has shared a few with me, and I went, "Yep, that's I've played that. That's exactly how it goes. I can confirm. That is not a meme."
All right, we've gone off the rails on this song. Let's move on. Command and Conquer. I'm not even going to try for a real transition.
All right, then.
Fair enough.
The track is Prepare for Battle. The way it's integrated in the game is that you basically have an MP3 player in the, Winamp skin you can access in the game, and you can select your tracks in it, and that's it. So, levels of integration, none.
I mean,
does that make it any less enjoyable a track? I don't think so. I love it. And the drop is absolutely clear. It could be argued it's one long intro followed by a main course as well, if not for the fact that it manages to get back on its feet and return after the drop and the intense part of the song progressively to the initial state. It's we call it a drop, but in real, another way to look at it, if you flip your perspective, is the intensity rising all of a sudden, and eventually it tapers down until it returns to the intro, and that intro serves as a reminder to build anticipation until it returns to that point, that high.
This one's got some vibe to it. This is a really kind of, I don't know, I'm trying to put this into words and I'm failing miserably.
It's very interesting how for a Command and Conquer song, you usually expect some very high energy from the get-go. This one takes its time. It's very industrial, but it
is from Klepacki after all. Industrial is kind of his bread and butter.
Yeah. Industrial is one of his middle names. The other is metal.
Yes.
This is a sort of industrial that is more ambient setting at the start until you get to the drop.
I mean, the track is named Prepare for Battle, and you kind of can hear the separation between the preparation within the barracks and the time where the explosions start flying everywhere. And it's fun that there's such a clear picture in mind given the lack of one of the usual tools in Frank Klepacki's toolbox, which is vocal samples or even downright explosion sounds and the likes used as part of the rest of the soundtrack very generously. This one is more of a kind of pure quote-unquote video game song. No lyrics, no nothing, but very much a vibe of quiet moments between moments of war where everything is exploding everywhere. Well, not really everything exploding everywhere. This isn't really a panic situation. I'm catching back up for that because he has better tracks for the panic situation. This one is more of a powerful advance.
Yeah.
And
sort of the army preparing to march and then the army actually going at it.
Just like in the game, you build up your buildings, your economy, your units, and then you go ahead and, oh no, never mind, you've been attacked from behind and suddenly you're losing everything. If you're me playing an FPS, RTS game anyway.
Yeah, that sounds like my experience with the genre.
I was going to say, how dare you describe my experience with the Age of Empires 4 AI?
I see we've all been there. But what's really fun about that is how clearly it figures out the tone, the build-up, the rhythm of the game itself, and everything like that, given that this was a very early example of the genre. Like, Dune 2 at the time was still a very recent and still played game, and that was literally the first of its genre. And by that point, they already had things pretty well figured out tonally. That's just impressive to me.
Yeah, sometimes when you have like these big trend setters, things just stick. And certainly Klepacki knows what he's doing. That's not new information. We've talked about him enough on this. For Command & Conquer not being a franchise that I've touched in 25 years.
We've talked about him since the first episode. Yeah. One of the tracks I brought for the first episode was also from Command & Conquer.
Yeah.
It was formative to me. It makes sense.
It makes sense. No, I get it. I'm definitely not arguing. The fact that he's been around is the bit around this podcast, despite none of us really being RTS players to any significant degree that I'm aware of, says an awful lot about the strength of this music and how much of a trend he did set at the time.
Yeah.
I think in a way also the fact that he was such a trendsetter also explains the very visceral reaction some people have to the StarCraft 2 soundtrack compared to the StarCraft 1 soundtrack. The StarCraft 1 kind of followed the DNA, let's say, of Frank Klepacki's sound, while StarCraft 2 was very ambience heavy. It is very ambience heavy. Like, I enjoyed those flutes in the Protoss themes here and there, but it is very low intensity. So it explains a lot that visceral reaction that a lot of people had, where they went, Blizzard is releasing the old songs into StarCraft 2. I would just play those instead.
This is me. I'm people.
There you go.
But yeah, to conclude on the track itself, I just thought that the way the drop was used to capture the transition between two gameplay phases, even if it didn't correspond to it within the game because it wasn't modular or anything like that, I thought was a pretty nice use of the drop as a tool to kind of represent the pace of the game. And on that, let's talk about another militarized unit, but this one from the far grim dark future of the year 40,000.
This song is a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'll just note in advance, starting here, no game on this episode other than it now playing at the end has been played by me. So I cannot give insights on how the song is used in game. But Warhammer 40k Darktide, in particular the song Disposal Unit Imperium Mix. The entire soundtrack of this game is by Jesper, and here is where we take that pin from the start of the episode about previous Hitman games and their soundtracks.
Indeed.
This is where Jesper goes back to what he does best, in my opinion, which is mixing church-esque sounds like the choir here with danceable electronica / EDM / industrial music.
Yeah, it's almost a back and forth situation, because if you take his work on the pre World of Assassination Hitman, it almost was like his music influenced the game, taking a direction with more presence of churches and religious imagery to almost make it fit his tracks. And then he works on Warhammer, where it was already a perfect fit.
Pretty much. Like, as someone who really enjoyed his work in the early Assassin's Creed games, minus the first one, it was disappointing when he came to the franchise again for Valhalla, and the soundtrack was kind of a meh thing. So hearing this after that, like, it's good that the man still has it in him. He makes good music.
He does. He really much does.
Yeah, Darktide was fairly recent, right? Like, that was just the last couple of years.
30th of November, 2022.
Okay, a little more than a couple of years, but not...
Not by much.
Yeah. Not, like, unrecent. Just, time marches on, and I hate it.
Post-COVID.
Post-COVID. Sort of. No, that was the tail end of COVID. Late COVID, yeah.
Late COVID, yeah.
Yeah, so no, he's still making some good stuff. This song in particular, I like the way it flows. I like its energy. It does have a drop at like 2 minutes. I don't think that initial chorus counts. I would be hesitant to count the initial chorus, but like the 2-minute one where it loops back in, that's more valid to me, as stupid as that statement just is.
Yeah, because if you take in contrast with the previous track, there's not really a return to the into the intro situation, kinda.
Yeah.
Like, you'd expect it to loop from after the intro to whatever end it goes, including the drop at 2 minutes, instead of returning all the way from the start. For as long as the situation happens. I haven't played the game as well. I imagine it's battle music. It sounds like the kind of music you'd have while you're mowing down absolute endless seeming hordes of enemies.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like what would play at the end of like the preparation phase, let's say. And then when the chorus kicks in, it's combat time. Yeah. At least that's the impression it leaves in my mind. I personally, like, I see your points and I think they make sense, but I personally did, under my criteria for whatever they are worth, I did count the bits at 40 seconds as an early drop. I didn't like it. To me, the fact that it's a transition from what a melodic phrase that doesn't come back, to me that didn't impact my understanding of a drop, but maybe it does. I don't know. Like,
which is also fair. It's also fair. We kind of each coming with our vision of the thing, and that's what makes it interesting.
Yeah, none of us are EDM guys, I think, so we're all kind of winging the idea of what a drop is. But yeah, this, like, some of Jesper Kud's songs with vocals from prior games, the vocals, sometimes they sound a bit overpowering. Like some Hitman games, they sound a bit too heavenly for Hitman, and on other games, other songs, they can sound a bit too ghostly. Like some Assassin's Creed songs, the vocals sound a bit too ethereal for what the game is actually like. This, like, would fall into the overpowered, but this is the Warhammer 40k aesthetic. That is what Warhammer 40k is, and the bass on the synth kind of rises to the occasion to follow with the choir.
Yeah, exactly. It very much fits the theme. It's very crunchy.
Yeah.
And that feels like a perfect fit. It's got this gravitas to it with the choir, but it also feels like Rust and, again, endless hordes of horror met with horrors that are just simply more human.
Yeah, like, you can even contrast it to Command & Conquer a bit. Like, Command & Conquer has a soundtrack where it is the sound of troops at war marching. This is the sound of the Warhammer 40k Marines marching.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think the main conclusion to me is that it's a perfect thematic fit.
And in my opinion, a perfect IP plus composer fit as well.
Yeah, like this is what 40k sounds like.
Yep.
Or should sound like.
It's what it sounds like in my mind when I see the setting.
Yeah. Although I will temper these words by saying this is what, like, the more human faction sounds like. Other factions can have different sounds because this is a very vast universe. But taking this Imperium of humankind centric approach to it, yeah, that's what it sounds like.
Yeah, that's fair.
Now, how about we move on to something differently unexpected? How about what sounds, even though I haven't played it, sounds like a tone theme with a drop?
No.
Dungeon, maybe?
I mean, the whole game is a dungeon. There are, I think, 2 or 3 safe spaces in the entire game of Dragon Quarter. Everything else is you're just traversing.
I see.
Made for an interesting.
Heard about that.
Yeah, made for an interesting sort of game, but not 100% sure it landed because RPG doesn't super lend itself well to that sort of vibe.
Yeah, it can get a bit exhausting after a while to just go after or danger after danger with little to no break between. That was kind of one of a problem with FF13 as well. Yeah. This game is actually quite similar to that in many ways. I see.
Dragon Quarter is a very, very, very strange game, especially for a very play-it-safe franchise like Breath of Fire. They decided to do the exact opposite of that in every way, shape, and form.
Huh.
The game has a hard time limit. The game will reset you. Like, you learn more about the game as you restart playing it. It almost...
So it almost sounds... roguelite?
There's nothing roguelite about it. Everything is fixed. Like, even enemy encounters are entirely curated.
Sounds like it should have been roguelite.
Probably should have been. As I said, it's a weird game. I found kind of an equilibrium with it after a while and came to enjoy it, but I totally understand why some Breath of Fire fans are like, F this game and everything it stands for. I get it. It is weird.
It does look weird.
Honestly, based on this song at least, it kind of sounds weird for a Breath of Fire game.
Oh, yeah. So fun fact, for Breath of Fire Dragon Quarter, aka Breath of Fire 5, though no one calls it that, they rehired one of the composers from the original Breath of Fire, Htoshi Sakimoto. We know him.
Yeah, we know him.
This is definitely his weirdest soundtrack.
I mean, Echo Chrome is pretty out there, but that's at least top 3.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair. That's fair. This is the guy who did Ogre and Final Fantasy Tactics. Like, that's this guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very... It feels very out of character for Breath of Fire and very experimental for Sakimoto.
Yeah. All of that is completely accurate.
And it's not like the Breath of Fire music hasn't gone to some strange places before. Breath of Fire 4 certainly has some strange tracks, especially by our Western standards, because there were very cut and dry influences, but I think worked very well with the setting. It was all integrated. This feels almost oppressive. Like, it feels less like a dungeon and more like a spaceship corridor. Like, I can hear that track in System Shock 2. It would work well there.
Honestly, this game, like, okay, so here's the thing. Unlike every other Breath of Fire game, your goal is you are in the depths of underground Dragonville, and your goal is to reach the sky and get out of the underground. There was a long-standing theory that this was a spin-off of Breath of Fire 2 as a result of that. That hasn't been confirmed or denied in any way, shape, or form, mostly because most of the people there are very few people who actually pay attention to this game, like, deeply, mostly because they hate it. But there is an argument to be made that the boss named Origin is, in fact, Ryu from Breath of Fire 2.
Huh.
Interesting.
Possibly. Question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark. Who knows? This game is weird. This song is later mid-game. You haven't quite gotten to the end game yet, but you're in one of the later areas. I believe this was one of the areas that in later playthroughs you could unlock a door and go to an alternate zone.
Honestly, interestingly, the mental image that came to me, rather than a spaceship or something like that, was actually Midgar from Final Fantasy VII.
This has a lot more this is a lot closer to that in tone. I think that makes more sense. This is it's hyper technical underground.
Yeah.
And sort of, the headcanon is like, what if Delogany, after it got sealed off, actually did take information from the land ship and reverse engineered it and grew their technology even though they're underground. That was my headcanon when playing through it.
It kind of has that vibe of like dingy underground cyberpunk in a cyberpunk world.
It's more dieselpunk than cyberpunk, but yeah, it's in that same. There's a lot of like steam and gears and not gears. It's a lot of like steam pipes and factory setting kind of feel.
It's grimy.
It's grimy. I have a lot of respect for this soundtrack in particular. It's definitely off kilter, but I think it works well within the context. It's got some great songs, and
it has the big brass and the heavy percussions, but also the very light woods. Not wind woods, the boom, 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 boom.
Yeah,
contrast completely.
Melodic,
and make it just feel weird.
Weird's a good word for it, but
yeah, and it feels deliberate. It feels like if it's indeed a game where you are going across dangerous land through a very unknown, uncharted territory, having this element in the background as a reminder of sorts that you are not in a safe environment, I think is fitting. It's unbalancing, you know.
It goes into that the filing cabinet of songs that are good songs, and I can definitely see them working really well in game. But I'm not listening to this during my free time.
I might. I like it. I like it. It's. I mean, dig Ranakel likes the weird song. Surprise, but.
Fair, but also it's industrial. That generally is my kind of vibe. But this is not quite the kind of industrial that I would listen to in my free time personally. But it's not a bad song. It's not poorly made, and I don't dislike it. I in fact really do like it. It's just not like it needs the proper setting. Let's say
it does. Now, is there something about the drop in this song in particular that strikes to you?
Yeah,
that speaks to you again?
The fact that this is such a weird song, but it has such a clearly defined drop. It has that, there's that low percussion. It has that like break in it, and that it just comes in with all of the strings, and even that almost repeats itself. Da 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 da. Hold, repeat. I don't know. There's something about that interaction musically that's always just kind of made me interested in the song. It draws me in. I think that's kind of the point of a good drop, is to get attention.
Yeah, I think this one, it's interesting because we've talked about how you can fail a drop and get a flop instead. And this one feels like it's stretching it to the exact limit where one single more bar would destroy it completely, and it knows the line to a millimeter.
Yeah. Sakimoto is a good composer. Lord knows I like the guy. I've been very open about that. So I didn't know when I first heard this sort of thing was in his wheelhouse, because at the time I was mostly familiar with him from Ogre Battle 64, and I mentioned Final Fantasy Tactics, and those are really, like, identifiable soundtracks. He's got a very unique style, and the fact that he can go this far out of his wheelhouse and create something like this is good for a guy who I would argue is largely a one-trick pony. He's just very, 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 very good at that trick.
I think it's a case where, because he's good at that trick, he's asked to perform it again, but when he can stretch his legs, he can do things like that on Echochrome and probably many other tracks we don't know of. But
yeah, I think that's
thing swim to the surface. Like, you don't get that kind of thing by just doing the same thing over and over again and then trying something different.
I think you hit on something kind of particular about this, is that what we've heard from Sakimoto tends to be his collaborations with Yasumi Matsuno, and those all have a very specific style. It could be that he's just sort of lent in this direction, as opposed to being allowed to kind of spread his wings and do stuff like, you know, this.
Yeah, that feels likely to me. Now, another thing I like about this drop in particular is that most of the ones we've covered so far have led to an intense phase post-drop. This one feels like after the drop there's darkness instead of intensity. And I think that's an interesting different use of the process. Helps sell the atmosphere of this very unique game that I haven't played.
Yeah, if there's one thing that Dragon Quarter did right, it's atmosphere, and I think the soundtrack being as weird as it is helped really sell that. It's a weird game. I don't know if I could recommend it with a solid conscience. Just know that it expects you to die and restart.
All
but
right.
If that sounds fun to you, you will probably like it. It's weird. It's a weird game. Be prepared for weird.
At least it's more information I've learned on Burfire 5 than at any other time before.
Well, there you go. Yeah, it basically, I would like to say that the game expects you to do Game Plus to even beat it, but the truth is I'm sure there's a speedrunner and challenge runners out there who've done it, like, of course.
Yeah, I'm taking my notes here, and I think I've written already 7 times in a row, Dragon Quarter is weird. It's the takeaway for today.
It is the takeaway. It is weird. It's a good kind of weird, I would argue, but you've got to be a specific kind of player to enjoy it. On the subject of weird, and you got to be a specific kind of player to enjoy it, let's talk about DDR.
Yeah. Yep. Let's talk about DDR Extreme, even.
So what makes it extreme?
Not to be confused with it's just the edition. It's like the 7th mixed, but they started using names instead of numbers.
Ah.
But yeah, this is A by DJ Amuro. And I've mentioned in the audio surf anecdote how the drop can have this very visual component, and I think for this one it's also applied along with the gameplay intensity. There's a start that sets a pace, a rhythm, which is pretty important in a rhythm game. It's right there in the name. And then it has this pause, which is represented very physically. It's why the video I chose wasn't the clean version of the track, but the one where you can actually see the gameplay, because when the music is in suspense as the drop happens, the gameplay does the same, and the arrows that constantly rise freeze for a moment, and this would make it unplayable if it happened randomly, because, again, rhythm game, but because the music conditions the gameplay back and forth, one might argue, this works to kind of cement the pace, where there's the intro, then the pause, and as the pause ends, we can expect the the beats per minute to change and the intensity to go from the pace you had remembered as the first step to and way to a more intense set of arrows and inputs to make in quick succession, which is very dangerous because of how the scoring works in the game. A lot of time you can be at max quote-unquote health as you get in the rhythm, as you go through the motions, but you can die from doing a lot of arrow in quick successions in a way doing them spread over the whole track wouldn't work. So having this intense concentration of difficulty perfectly embodied by a post-drop burst of intensity, both musically and in the gameplay, really works to challenge the player, which is cool.
I am obviously not a DDR guy, but I can see that.
Yeah,
sounds interesting.
It's one of those cases where the musical process informs the gameplay. It wouldn't work gameplay-wise if before and after the drop the difficulty stayed even, if the inputs to make stayed very stable. It has to have a before and an after in a way that is felt kinetically as you use the arrows or the dance pad or whatever input method you're using to go through that song.
I don't really have much to say, to be honest. This is like, we've kind of made a joke of it when at the start of our podcast, way back in the day. It was a thing that I didn't like electronic music. And then over time, more and more electronic songs showed up that I enjoyed. And it was even a joke in one of our episodes, I can't remember which, where like, weren't you the guy who didn't like electronic music? This is the sort of electronic music that I'm not a fan. Like,
yeah, I understand that.
Not for me. I enjoy
which is strange because there's a lot of orchestral element. I mean, the pre-drop and post-drop is illustrated also by the switch from a focus to string to a focus to piano.
Yeah.
But of course, it's then supplemented by the electronic sounds.
No, my exact notes on this song are, is this a remix of a Persona third to last boss theme or something?
Oh. I don't make the comparison at all, but I can see where it's coming from.
Yeah, I'm not talking about, like, the vocal songs. I'm talking about, like, the Almighty from 4, or...
Yeah, that's the one I pictured immediately.
Yeah, exactly. This just, to me, this sounds like it started life as a song like that and got remixed to all heck.
Like, you could probably pretty easily just add the vocals from the Velvet Room theme.
Yeah.
I did note down that I do really like the synths they use for the piano and strings. But it's just... I think it's more that it's specifically made to be danced to, and I'm not a dance guy. Sort of that vibe is not my thing.
Fair enough.
Not poorly made though. It's very, very well made, in fact.
So much that they made 2 sequels. They're named AA and AAA.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. And they are very different feeling songs, but they still have every time, even if they don't change the rhythm, they still have a before with the intro melody and an after with the piano melody, because that's probably the main definition, the main thing that defines the song, and that this articulation is this centerpiece of around which the whole songs revolved. I think is interesting. Now then, shall we go from A to X?
I get it. I get it.
That wasn't even deliberate when I ordered the tracks, but it had to be done.
Fair enough. X Rebirth, which is my least favorite game of the franchise, but that's another talk. Nemesis 2 by the same composer as the entire franchise, Alexei Zakharov. This man is just, in my opinion, amazing at making spacey tracks. And this is one of those where if you just listen to the song slowly, your first thought might be, how in the hell does this thing have a drop?
Correct.
Yep. It turns out there's kind of a strong switch from spacey piano looking at the stars to, I think we are in a nightclub in space now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually thought this was a really cool track. What kind of game is X, if you don't mind me asking? I've never played it.
They are space simulators. X Rebirth in particular is the least open-ended one. You have a specific ship and there is a specific plot you're meant to follow.
Okay.
But the franchise overall is like, you are in the middle of space with a dinky little ship and you have to make your fortune whichever way you want. So you can start trading.
It's mainly a series about escalations in space, where you start like with a flying trash can and you end up at the head of a whole armada.
Or if you follow a different path, you are the leader of a literal mega corporation in space trading stuff between solar systems.
Times. But yeah, this song is a whole vibe. It feels like it helps set up a certain vision of what fills this space.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether this plays in the game or not. Like, X Rebirth is a game I tried a little bit, didn't like, and dropped it. And the track is labeled as a bonus track on the soundtrack. So I'm not sure whether
that
it
makes
actually
it hard to figure out the context.
Yeah, it might not even play in the game, or maybe it plays as you go into one of the space stations. Because this, one of the main differentiators in this one compared to the previous games, that you could actually look into the space stations, go inside them, at least some of them. For most of the X franchise, you just get the look from the external view while you're interacting via menus with the station. So maybe this is to set the ambience in some space station or other, or maybe it's just something that was made as like a proof of concept, like how visual artists make concept art for characters. Yeah. Maybe this was a concept for the vibe of the game, and it just got added to the soundtrack.
I could really see that kind of work helping define the atmosphere, because, like I said, it's a whole vibe, and yeah, that can definitely help set things up. It feels very much of a... It sets up kind of a forward motion, which I think works with the fact that this is a more linear entry in the series. It sounds like someone's on a mission, you know?
You can see that. This is a very interesting addition, I would say, to Zakharov's output, because most of the music he makes is very spacey or very combat oriented. This is very different from that, but it very much still fits the franchise.
Yeah. Also, the way the build-up works is not less clearly defined, but the length at which it takes to assemble its elements and walk towards the drop makes the before and the after the drop not so much different. It's just almost like a leap, which still works, to be clear. it works very well as an articulating piece. It just feels like it's used in a different way from most of the other tracks, where what's before and after aren't so different than in other tracks.
I think it's also interesting that most tracks we've talked about, the bit that comes before the drop tend to feel like, at least, like a build-up of tension.
Yes.
Specifically tension. This one, what comes before the drop is just, honestly, some beautiful piano. Like,
yeah, exactly.
I don't feel tense with that.
Yeah, the two parts are very much a whole, and it works for a track that's got a very... It uses familiar element and familiar process to make a structure that feels different. It's like looking at things from a whole different angle, and I really like that.
And also the obligatory comment, we just moved from a electronic song with a lot of piano that I don't like and isn't my style to an electronic song with a lot of piano that is my style. I think this would be categorized as trance, if I understand electronic styles correctly, which I probably
Sounds
don't.
right to me.
But yeah, everything I've heard by Zakharov is a vibe. Of course, there's the combat songs as well, which are a bit different. And Rebirth, despite being a game I don't like that much, has a very strong soundtrack, and this is a song I listen to a lot when I relax.
I can definitely see that. That's not one that's going to kill you at the gym with its intensity, but it still has this forward momentum.
This is definitely not a song on my workout playlist. No.
Good.
This is on my chill playlist.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
All makes sense.
Just checking the boxes of the running gags of this podcast. My gym playlist has been mentioned.
Indeed. No, we've mentioned that this one sounds like a nightclub in space. How about we go listen to an intended theme for our nightclub in the game it's in?
So it's funny you should mention that, because the only part of it we get in the game is a very small snippet that it's almost impossible to hear.
Yeah, I played this game and I absolutely didn't pay attention or reference that track. And that's not the only track that has an existence in the soundtrack that feels disconnected from its existence in-game.
Oh, yeah.
You don't hear most of the second part of most fight themes, and some of them can be completely different. What are you doing, Yakuza?
Yakuza 5 was a weird entry.
I think the video description for this specific upload actually mentions that, like, only a little bit is used. And you look at the actual song, and it's like 30 minutes.
Well,
that's an extended version.
That's an extended cut.
Yeah. Right. Like, there's this much music here, and only a short snippet is used.
So, yeah, no, they commissioned a full song that ended up mostly on the cutting room floor, and it's a shame, because this one's a good one.
Honestly, if they ever reuse it, and it's not about them, they know how to recycle, I could see that being the backing track for a very fun minigame.
I mean, that's exactly what they did with the boss music from Judgment that got cut and ended up being music for Dragon Kart, so
yeah,
that is definitely a thing they've done before. So, this particular song was actually among my first picks, because it is like a decent EDM and it's got a big drop in there. The fact that this song that's so good barely exists in the game because of reasons is just baffling to me. I literally, I bought and downloaded the soundtrack, put it in my playlist, and just kind of went through. And then one day I was just sort of listening to it, and I'm like, what the heck is this song? I look over and I'm seeing like Club Futo Momo. Wait, that's that spot that Shinada's girlfriend works. You go in there like once. Maybe twice. And they wasted a song this good on that?
And you go there only after, 30 hours of playtime?
Oh,
because
yeah.
You already have to go through like 4 hours, 4 other stories at this point. Yakuza 5 was a game that was really too ambitious.
It was.
But
it's hard for me to put this
in a way that I kind of respect, you know?
Yeah, I mean, if there's one thing this studio does is just throw everything at the wall. Sometimes it sticks, sometimes it doesn't.
They sure did in this case.
Yeah, this just to go back to the actual music here for a moment. This is traditionally this would be another song that falls into this was made to be danced to, which is not my thing. But I think I can dig this one, to be honest. It's got some really cool energy here.
This one's a little angrier than songs of that vein.
Yeah, I have what might be a little bit of a weird take.
Okay.
But the melody after the drop sounds to me like it could work in like Mega Man X9 in a Sigma stage.
I can see that.
Okay, sure. Yeah, okay, sure.
Yeah.
Capcom, please release a new Mega Man X game.
Please.
Yeah. Yes, please. Also, what I think is interesting when it comes to the articulation around the drop is that it's a bit of a progressive intensification around the drop, of course, but it also feels like they are kind of introducing each element of the music one by one in the lead up and then putting them all together after the drop instead of just intensifying it, which I think is a very cool approach. Like, you're presenting your sugar and your eggs and your milk, and the drop happens and suddenly you have a cake.
Okay.
I can see that.
Yeah, all right. That took a second for me to like translate in my brain, but I think you might be onto something there.
Thank you. I try.
It also feels weirdly nostalgic for me because the kinds of sounds in the song remind me a lot of some electronic music that would get played a lot here in the 2000s.
Yeah, the fact that it's made to illustrate a club music, this time without even a guest at the wheel, helps make it fit the expected mold. Like, it's there to illustrate a club, which makes it all the more of a shame that in the end you just hear a tiny part of it and see a tiny part of the club, for that matter.
That just screams of missed opportunity.
Welcome to Yakuza 5. Finally, let's talk about a track from Hyrule Warriors, the Skyloft one, which I think used the drop in an interesting way because, first, it's a song that uses the peaceful, uptone, chill, tranquil theme as a battle music. So that's already pretty cool. Drives you forward, makes you... and like, it fits perfectly in the action by just taking that track, accelerating it, lots of guitar. It's good Warrior stuff.
It's good Warrior stuff. Warriors franchise, brain in action. This reminds me a lot of like Samurai Warriors 2 with a lot of the flute action going on. Very much that energy, the way they used pipes in that game in particular.
Yeah, except this one is also a translation of an original theme where the melody wasn't made for that sort of music, but they make it work. They
do.
build around it, and I think it's really nice. And they make it work up to a build-up where in the original track, the build-up eventually just leads to the track looping, which makes sense. It's a peaceful tone theme that doesn't need to be a drop, and thus there isn't one. But here, it ramps up higher, more intensely, and then it switches to the post-drop theme, which is a whole different sound completely. They blend in the main hub theme and the main theme for Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword as a whole, and have the drop as a demarcation line between the two themes, which I think is a really interesting use and a way to kind of have this track fit its role as this is the Skyward Sword level. We only really have one main track to illustrate it, but that game is broader than a single place and a single track, so let's play around with it. And this just works really well for that game's heavy fan service action.
Yeah.
And I say fan service in a broad sense.
The traditional sense, not the... Yeah.
Yeah. As a fan, I have been very much serviced.
That was the point
this game
of the first two Crossover Warriors games for Nintendo, the Hyrule Warriors and Fire Emblem Warriors 1.
Yes.
After this, they transitioned into more story and sequel matters, with, you know, Three Hopes and Age of Calamity, and now soon Age of Imprisonment.
Different levels of success, I would argue. One game I hold in a high esteem near Hyrule Warriors, not quite there, but right under, and the other I just couldn't get into it. But
I'm going to assume
didn't help either.
I'm going to assume, just for the sake of argument here, that the one you liked is Three Hopes, and the one you didn't was Age of Calamity? ?
Correct.
Okay.
I mean, Three Hopes I finished like twice even.
Oh.
And I don't run games multiple times in general. And Age of Calamity I didn't finish.
Neither did I. I got close to the end and just sort of like, I don't care about this.
Yeah.
The cruddy plot twist, I don't want to talk about this too much, but there was a cruddy plot twist that's like, this is just here because Nintendo has no balls.
Yeah, I think I know what you mean. Only because I heard it from people displeased with that plot twist.
Understandably. Admittedly, a couple of those characters were really good and a couple of them weren't. Anyway, that's not relevant to anything. This song is cool. I like this remix a lot. I liked this energy.
It's
I
action,
do hear the
but
drop.
It's very positive. It's very fluffy.
Yeah, which is good for Zelda, I think. Grimdark Zelda is something no one wants.
It's something some people want.
I say that as a Twilight Princess fan, but like...
Yeah.
It's like, even...
There's Twilight Princess Dark and there's Dark Souls Dark.
Yeah, I do not want the latter. Keep that out of my Zelda.
Yes. Correct.
In the end, Zelda is a Errol Flynn-inspired adventure. Let's stick with that.
I like it when it does that.
Me too.
Sometimes you just want to be a green hooded hero with a sword that smacks monsters and wins the day.
Yeah.
And you can have still a lot of room to explore on that. And I think Hyrule Warriors did an interesting exploration of that myth that builds up across the games while still just working as a very fun Warriors game by itself.
Yeah, exactly.
And as far as this track goes, yeah, the fact that it's high up in the sky, it's rather small compared to a lot of the other maps, but very, you have to walk here and there, at least in the main story mission, in this map in order to have the main parts of the track accessible, which is an interesting way to make a more constrained area work as a map with a standard length. And throughout the map you hear that song, and given that it's not a change of intensity but a change of motive because it smooshes these two different songs together, it also works very well to not take you out of the action. You're still in there, you're still keeping that pace steady all throughout, but in two different ways. That's neat. That's a neat trick. And this felt like a very different use of a drop, and I wanted to showcase that as a final little bit for this episode.
An interesting thing for me from this song is that since I was listening to our playlist with the idea of drops in mind, so I was expecting a drop to come. The way the flute comes up at 26 seconds of the song almost feels like a fake out. Like,
kinda. Because it's the same melody as the one before the drop, but with different instrument and different energy.
Yeah, and there's this sudden quote unquote silence right before the flute starts playing for just a split second.
Yeah.
It almost feels like a flute drop. Like, the hell is a flute drop? How do you do a drop with a flute? But I know the real drop comes a little bit later.
Massa finds a way.
But it's a very interesting, as is usually the case with these adaptations into the Warriors formula. It is an interesting reuse of a song in a new context. It's sort of like for people who might not play the Warriors games or listen to their soundtracks, it's sort of like a Super Smash Bros. Situation where they are taking the known songs and dropping them in a new context, much more action-oriented focus. And it's interesting the ways they do that. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Here it does, surprisingly, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, like, it's a heavy adaptation job, but the result speaks for itself. It's a track that's good enough, it makes me want to play missions in that level.
Yeah. I talked about Koei's ability to adapt for whatever they're adapting to actually, like, make their way into that style of music a couple of times now. I believe we were talking about it during one of our Warriors episodes in the context of Fate Samurai Remnant. And this is also why one of the reasons I'm so down on Berserk Band of the Hawks soundtrack, among many other flaws that game has, numerous, is that they adapted what was at its core a bad soundtrack to begin with the anime soundtrack just sounding like Garbo, and they adapted Garbo into here's Garbo but now there's guitars, maybe? Like, it's good they know what they're adapting, and it works definitely better when the basics are strong like this game, as opposed to when they're weaker like Fate or like Berserk.
Even though they do a lot of job, like I said, changing the genre of the song, essentially, while keeping the melody. It's just... I feel like they had a lot of liberty to work with, and the result was one of the best Warriors entry period.
Yeah. In fact, I would describe Hyrule Warriors as the start of Koei's big turnaround, because I think this was either just before or right around Dynasty Warriors 7 when they're like, okay, let's make good games again.
I think so. And then they had other ideas eventually. But that's neither near nor there. We have been talking about drops in music, not drops in quality.
Wow! Okay.
That one just came spontaneously. I'm pretty proud of it.
You should
I was
be.
gonna ask whether you were holding that one for the entire episode.
Nope. Just right there.
Nope, that was just pure random brain in action.
Well, with that, I also don't have a transition for that. Maybe the fact that there's been a lot of video game news that have been dropping as well, and we won't be covering much of them, but we will cover the games we have played in Music Arcade Now Playing.
Fair enough.
That's fair.
All right, who's going first?
I'll lead the way. Have been playing, first of all, some of my, at this point, routine set of Hoyo Gacha and Friends, and there's been a bit of an end of a story arc in Honkai Star Rail with a new boss fight, which has a pretty cool music that I like, so I thought this should be featured. There's been even more recently a whole new version for Zen Zone Zero, but I haven't really had the time to play it yet, but I heard good things.
All right.
Then I've been playing a lot of Monster Train 2, and I've been itching to return to it. Monster Train 2 is a very good way to expand on the mechanics of the original, while not really completely breaking the formula that was there. They know what they had with the first one, and they've continued. They got wait, what was the name of the game? Oh, I'm having a brain fart. Inkbound? I'll just...
There is a game called Inkbound, but I'm not sure that's the one you...
That is the one I was
thinking
of. Alright. They got their experimentation out of the way with Inkbound, which I liked a lot as well. And for Monster Train 2, they returned to something a bit more steady and familiar for Monster Train fans. And I think it worked very well. I've been having tons of fun. And the soundtrack is pretty solid as well, with this track, Fallen Angel Anthem, being one I've enjoyed a lot. Like, the only problem I have with the soundtrack is its use, and the fact that there is, for instance, each of the main 5 factions of the game has its own theme, but you don't need to play that faction to have that theme plays. So it kind of disconnects it from its origin. A bit of a shame. But the music themselves are just really enjoyable. And finally, one with a soundtrack I've remarked a bit less on, but Core Keeper has had an update released recently, and the update itself isn't all that relevant, but the fact that a few friends have set up a whole multiplayer server made it a fun excuse to go back and really dive into that game, go beyond the old game as well, build a lot, and just have fun in a multiplayer little Terraria-like, which has been a pretty great time. And that's most of what I've played, and that has music that is worth mentioning. Next!
I guess I'll go next. So I did a little mini game thing, shorter games, wanted to put together. There were a couple of songs that I wanted to talk about. There was Ghost 1.0, a game you recommended, Rana. That was a very... I didn't like the game at the end. I felt it kind of fell apart, but I respect it a lot. I thought the music was pretty cool. Had some major issues, though, like when you restart after a death, the music would just not play at all, and I had to restart the game to get it to play. A lot of issues like that started piling up towards the end, especially. Another one I played.
A shame.
Yeah. Another one I played that I really liked better, but also kind of don't like, strangely enough, is one of Team Ladybug's earliest games, and that's Touhou Luna Nights. I'm still technically playing it, but they definitely fixed a lot of things between this and Deedlit Wonder Labyrinth, which is a game I truly like. So it felt good going back. The music's great, because why wouldn't it be?
I think if nothing else, it's interesting to see the path from this to Deedlit in Wonder Labyrinth to what was the name of the cyberpunk ghost game?
Blade Chimera.
Blade Chimera.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a development team that's getting better every game, so keep it up.
Yeah. Keep doing what you're great at. Or experiment and try some other stuff. Honestly, I like when there's a through line you can follow with a studio. It just makes it feel more personable. It makes you appreciate even the imperfection of the things you'd have done differently. Yeah. And it's funny. It's my biggest complaints about Touhou Luna Nights are a list of things that they had already fixed by the time of Deedlit and Wonder Labyrinth. So I'm like, I'm not even sure if I need to vocalize this. They know what they did wrong, and they got it right the next time around. Like, okay, well, good job. If you don't play a lot of indie games, small teams have a personality to them that big studios will never have, because the turnaround is just too important for it to manifest. Yeah. Also played a game called Pseudo Regalia, no song added because I have no memories of this game's music. This was a throwback to like N64 era platforming. This game is not for me, like extremely. I see. And then there was one game that I will not post a video here on for reasons shortly, that Des recommended and didn't realize there was a major flaw with it, and that was what is that called? Hang on a second. Astral Blade. Awaken Astral Blade, excuse me. And I recognize in the first 2 minutes it's like just full of AI, including AI music. Yeah. And I'm like, oh no. No. I'm not doing this. That's eliminatory. Yep. So, that music was bad because it was AI. It was AI generated. I'm like, this is almost music. You've gotten closer. AI. Maybe in another... It has all the elements of music. Sure. It just has no heart at all. Which should come as no surprise, given that it's not a person making it. Indeed. And then there's a last entry, and I doubt it's Eddie that added an Arknights track. Right, yeah, okay, thank you. I knew I was forgetting something.
Yeah, that's why I was so quiet. Like, that ain't me.
Yep, no, you're right. New Arknights event, cool music. What else is new? Next. Yep.
I'll do the inverse, and I'll go through my usual suspects first.
Okay.
Age of Mythology and Destiny 2.
You played Destiny?
I guess. Yeah, there isn't any new music for those two, so let's just move on. I've been playing some Star Wars Battlefront 2, the EA one. Because I had it. I got it for free on the Epic Games Store, I think 3 years ago at this point.
Might as well push some buttons in it.
Yeah, and there has been a movement in this over the past few weeks of people trying to get a huge population in the game to show Disney / LucasArts that there's an interest in a Battlefront 3. To the point where the population on Steam was the highest that Battlefront 2 has ever been this past weekend, as of the time of this recording. So I looked at the fact that there were actually people playing again, plus it is a fun game, and I went, why not? Let's reinstall this thing. And it's a fun time.
Not?
But
after all, why shouldn't I play it?
The soundtrack is just stuff from the movie, so
yeah,
it's not video game music. It's not on the playlist.
Although one thing that struck me about Battlefront as a series was how more than the music, the sound effects immediately helped build the feeling of Star Warsiness.
It definitely carries that mission well, like the mission of feeling like you are a trooper in one of these armies. In Star Wars, they do a great job at that. I think the old ones from LucasArts, when LucasArts was still a development studio, also did that. But I think if you want something very immersive, the DICE ones by EA, they are even better at that because of the higher fidelity. It's really neat. Going to new stuff, I've also been fallen prey to Clair Obscur Expedition 33.
Okay.
Pardon my French.
Passable.
Bringing no song from it because I think the game has too good of a soundtrack. I want to explore it in detail on an actual episode rather than just go through it at the end of the...
Once you two have actually beaten this game, I think we probably should do a deep dive on it, just given how important this game is this year.
I'm all for it. I already
agree.
have this month and next taken for, but I'll probably get back to it in full and commit to finishing it in August.
And I need to make sure my computer doesn't explode. Well,
that's a good idea too.
Going back to the list, I just have two more entries. They're both indie games, and coincidentally, they're both Brazilian made. One of them is Nine Kings, which is a roguelike deck builder, but instead of going directly into battles like in Monster Train, you build your kingdom and the battles are automatic between the tiny little armies. It's a very low fidelity game in its visual style, so the soundtrack also kind of fits that vibe. It's a bit sparse, save for the final boss theme where you have some guitars kick in. It's not very memorable as a soundtrack, to be honest. I think it's okay. The game itself is fun, though. You do need to enjoy auto battlers, in my opinion, because most of the game is you building your strategy and then waiting to see how the fight goes. You can control one tower during the fight, but how much that affects things will vary between which king you choose to play as. Some king's towers are
manual controls, not the drive.
Yeah. And the last game on my list is Hell Clock. It's basically a game with a progression system similar to Hades, but a combat style that is closer to Diablo itself. The actual.
You say
Diablo
that, but just before the show, I was watching the PC Gaming Show, which had a trailer for the game. I believe it's in early access, which is why there's a trailer, even though it's playable.
It has a demo out. It's
right.
Not on early access yet. It has a free demo, which is in pre-alpha stage.
I see. And what struck me is the fact that despite having hell right in the name, they described the genre not as a Diablo-like, but as an Exile-like or a Path-like, something like that. A reference to Path of Exile as a main inspiration and not Diablo.
I'm not sure how I feel about that.
Yeah, that's because of one of the meta progression systems as roguelite games have is a series of constellations. So I think a more appropriate comparison point I think would be Grim Dawn rather than Path of Exile. But the gameplay itself is you simply going down one single dungeon, always going one floor extra down, and this dungeon is below what used to be a church. So there are some Diablo 1 comparisons there as well.
Correct.
And outside of these influences, which the game wears on its sleeve, it's a heavily Brazilian game, but in a way that most international audiences are not aware of.
Interesting.
The soundtrack basically sounds like a genre of music we call sertanejo, which is sort of the Brazilian equivalent to the American country music, in that you have the more old school roots style with just acoustic instruments, but it also has eventually developed a more clean and radio friendly version that is very poppy in recent years.
I see.
The game takes the older styles, the more grassroots ones, and mix them with a very gothic vibe, very gothic tone and feeling, and
so it's both Brazilian, folk, and gothic.
Pretty much.
Do you like it?
Yes, I do.
Strange. Wouldn't have expected that.
Yep, that's total surprise.
Yeah. This is a game where if you don't know that this is Brazilian, or if you don't get that there are some Portuguese words thrown here and there, you might not realize it's Brazilian, because they bring elements of Brazilian culture that most people outside of Brazil aren't aware of. The entire game is a fantasy version of a very dark moment in Brazilian history called either War of Canudos or Massacre at Canudos, depending on the person you ask.
Great.
There's a reason the word is massacre for one of those versions. I will not go in detail, but yeah, it's
sounds super great. Honestly,
it's really
the
interesting.
The game, not the massacre.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. But since the game is in pre-alpha, there's some quirkiness, some stuff that occasionally breaks or doesn't work quite right for me. So
it'll be interesting to check once he has a bit more time in the oven.
Yeah,
that's what it sounds like.
Yeah, it's already fun enough right now for me, but you might want to wait about a month and a half, because apparently the PC gaming show had a release date announcement, which is July 22nd.
Okay.
So it's a game to keep an eye on.
Yeah.
And that's it for me.
Which means it's it for everyone.
That's
Please,
all the time we
take us out.
I'm trying. Thank you everyone for tuning in. As always, you can find our playlist and how to reach us in the description below. Thank you all so much for tuning in, and we will see you next time.
Goodbye.
See ya.
Patient.